Not live in this country anymore. I'm going back to India.
Happy Diwali, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining in. So in today's video, we're going to talk about something that's most discussed on social media, which is, the reasons why immigrants are leaving Canada. Is it not surprising because, you might have heard that Canada need immigrants, and even we ourselves spoke about it and, in a video before. So if you haven't checked it out, please make sure to check it out. I will leave a link right here.
In fact, there was a recent survey that was done that found that, over the course of the next 2 years, 30% of young immigrants are supposed to leave the country. Now, that's a quite high number considering for a country that's looking for immigrants to come in and bolster the economy. And so in this video, we're going to talk about some of the reasons as to why people contemplate moving away from this country, and even some of the struggles that we faced, as when we were contemplating whether to live in this country or not, and how we were able to overcome it. And we're hoping that through this video, we'll be able to offer some hope and courage to those out there who are moved recently to Canada or in Canada contemplating what to do with their life.
Make sure to stay till the end of the video so that you might discover some of the reasons that might resonate with you, so that you can make an informed decision if you're looking to immigrate to Canada. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel, share and like.
All right, let's get into the reasons, guys.
Reason number one is a no-brainer. It's the climate in Canada. Of course, we all know this. Canada is supposed to have one of the harshest climates, especially Alberta is supposed to have one of the harshest winters. For someone having immigrated from southern parts of India, where the minimum temperature that we have seen is plus 24, but for me it was an absolute shock when I moved to Canada the first day, because the first day when I landed in Canada it was minus 40, and I still remember getting out of the airport and running straight to the car telling Manoj that I cannot live in this country anymore, I'm going back to India.
That really scared me, because when we started our journey as a new couple in Canada, I was really wondering whether Priya would get used to the weather here. It was also a struggle for me when I moved here as a student in 2016. I wasn't sure what to expect of the weather, and so when the winter came around, it wasn't something that I was able to predict or expect, but all I could do was do the best, which is prepare myself for what was to come. But I've also seen a number of people who've left Canada because they've just not been able to handle the weather.
So the one thing that I would say which helped me cope with this weather is probably, proper clothing, proper insulation, in your atmosphere, the house you're living in your surroundings, and warm food. Like for me, that was really a helper, I would say. So my hot chocolates and things that helped me survive. This is exactly how I did it. But I would also say that, this is not for a really long period of time. So if you're actually ready to, put up with it, you can do it, yeah.
We found that, usually towards the end of December and then January and February, usually the coldest. And in fact, even the cold varies. So as we said earlier, we thought Alberta was the coldest province. But then I remember when we traveled to Ontario in March, we felt that was colder than Alberta, and then we realized there was a difference in terms of cold, which is dry cold and wet cold. Guys, what we realized was that it wasn't actually the cold that was making us feel think about whether we wanted to live here or not. It was more the lack of sunlight during the winter time, because the days are usually shorter, as well as the lack of good exposure to winter activities and a good social circle. In fact, what we realized was as winter went along, when we started to venture out, we went to see ice skating festival, we did tubing, and we did a few other winter activities. And once we got to mingle with friends and family around, we felt that we were sort of at home. And so it really helped us understand and be able to acclimatize to the weather much better, other than being on your own. Because if you come here as a student, if you're living on your own, it is indeed a struggle and it is a tough time. And so going out and building those networks and circles will make a big difference in your life.
We do totally understand that if you're someone with health conditions or medical problems, it might be really hard for you to cope up with this weather, but it's absolutely in your hands to make your choice. But we're just here to motivate you. If you're somebody who, as winter is approaching, cannot take it, and you're looking, that as a reason to move out of the country, then probably that's something you might have to think about again, because as some of the ways that we discussed, just right now, you can find your own ways through which you can overcome this and still live in this beautiful country.
Guys, reason number two is a high cost of living in Canada, and this must also not be a surprise for you. In fact, if you remember in the earlier part of the video when I spoke about a survey, that survey also found that over 75% of immigrants leave Canada just because of the high cost of living. Now, some of you might have heard about the ridiculously high house prices in Toronto and Vancouver and some of these major cities. And so, like, buying a house in those areas, especially for somebody who's just starting out as a new immigrant in Canada or just moved here as a student, can be quite impossible. In fact, I remember in 2016 when I moved here as a student, the only thought in my head was how was I going to afford living expenses in my second year, and all I was thinking about was to find a job to make sure that I can afford that. Once I graduated out, like I had a student loan which I had taken out, and so I had to find a job to be able to afford to pay back the student loan as well as start building my emergency fund and other funds together so that I could settle myself up to be able to succeed in the future. So definitely having a high cost of living does not help anybody who's trying to build their life and trying to succeed in their life here in Canada.
Even if you're somebody who's immigrating with a PR, as I was, it still isn't easy for you to, just get accustomed to this situation here, because with one salary, it's obviously not going to be easy. And it was, in our case especially, was very, hard, because we obviously, he was the only earning person, and I was like having that pressure, where I have to come and support him. So we totally understand that that could be one of the reasons why people, especially when you move into Canada as a family, when you immigrate to Canada as a family with kids, it could be hard when, there's only one person in the family who's trying to meet all the corners. But we also have told you about the opportunities in Canada, because that's one thing that you can obviously stumble upon if you are looking to support your family in some way or the other. So it's definitely possible to face this challenge, but it obviously is something that you need to consider if Canada is a place that you want to move into.
And in fact, one of the things that we've seen is Canada is traditionally generalized. And so people would associate anything that's happening in Toronto or Vancouver to what is happening all over Canada. And we can vouch that, that is definitely not the case. In fact, when Priya came in, the reason we were able to, do pretty okay in the initial stages was because we were living in Edmonton, and the cost of living is actually not quite high, let's say, compared to Vancouver or Toronto. So the rents we were paying in our first year was close to, let's say, for a one bedroom, we were paying like $800 per month. And we felt, that was quite affordable even on one salary. And so a reason for hope that we can offer to some of the folks that are watching this is that, instead of just considering, let's say, some of the bigger cities, think about, if you can move to some of the smaller cities to be able to increase your affordability, to be able to afford some of the things that you really want in life. And making a list of those things just to make sure, what is important to you in life. Like if social life is more important to you, or if home ownership and having a low cost of living is important to you, would be able to help you understand where in Canada can help you succeed in getting those things off of your list.
One last thing we'd like to remind you is the government support. So if you're coming in as a permanent resident, then there are some, factors like childcare, health or medical, and even the GST support, which you can utilize from the government. So from the place you're immigrating from, most of these things you might have to, have to pay out of your pocket. But here, these are some things that's covered under the taxes that you pay. So that might sort of improve your conditions when you're living in Canada, especially from an affordable point of view. Reason number 3 is not getting the job you deserve. So most people, when they immigrate to Canada, they eventually start looking for opportunities very specific to the role that they have been working back home. Like even for me, when I moved into Canada and job search time, I was sort of looking for positions and job titles very specific to something that I did back home in India. And I did get a few interview shots, but things just fell apart. So I think when you move to Canada, finding a job and within a very specific job description or category might not always happen.
And even for me, when I moved here as a student, I had work experience before coming from my home country. And so my initial expectations were that I would be able to find something similar. But then getting yourself qualified and certified as an engineer is an arduous task in Canada. And so then this, I think, would carry on to some of the other designations in Canada. And so it is a little bit of a struggle for you to get into the professions that you might have been from your country. And so when I graduated out, even with my Canadian education, I started out working as an intern for the government of Alberta. So it wasn't all straight shooting and free sailing for both of us.
Right now we are in a position where we are happy with the kind of job that we do. It's only because we were ready to adapt and delve into the opportunities that we got for ourselves. So for me, it was specifically, my most important target was to get my foot in the door. So I was ready to take a career shift, but that might not be something that you might be open to, but we recommend that you have that open mindset.
One thing that I kept hearing through my time as a student was, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And so one of the things that I've always been taught from a young age was to get to know people around you, build those relationships. And so I thought to myself, I am in Canada, I'm living a dream for many. And so the fact that me being here, the worst I can do is at least try. And so I've always was looking for opportunities to be able to learn new things, to grow and move forward. And so when this internship opportunity came about, I decided, what, similar to what Priya said, I just wanted to get a foot in the door. And the minute I got a foot in the door, I was able to get in the organization and get to know so many people and get to know so many things that people are working on. In fact, I believe that is what helped me grow. And in fact, after a couple of years, I was able to go from an intern into a senior analyst. And this is a significant jump. And this happened only because I was able to push and persevere. Now, we do understand that there might be people out there who either may not want to go through this process, or might be what, we did try, we were not able to get opportunities. And we do understand them. We do understand that not everybody might be able to get those opportunities. But what we feel is that you should feel satisfied that you were able to put your best step forward and you did the best that you can to be able to find a job that you think you deserved.
For us, especially for me, I would say opportunities doesn't always have to give you a reward in terms of salary, because I initially volunteered for an organization just because I wanted my face to be familiar to a lot of people around in here. So as Manoj said, networking is something that's really important for you to get a job, no matter in which industry you want to move into. So even if you are somebody who's willing to do some volunteer positions just to get yourself put out there, that's something that I highly appreciate. Well, the next reason why most people leave Canada is because they're missing their family. Of course, I'm somebody who can completely understand that, because when I moved to Canada, even till today, I still miss my family. And it's especially the fear of missing out on so many occasions and so many celebrations and functions back home. You always had people around you, and there's always used to be some kind of celebration, or some people who have always been around you, nurturing you. 26 years of my life, that's how I lived. I've never stayed outside of family. So for me to move to another country, it wasn't absolutely easy.
And in fact, we've realized that the social circle that you create around you and the friends that you have will become family, especially when you're living in a country abroad. And so we've been so blessed to have some wonderful friends around us who've helped support us at time of need and who we've been there for whenever they've needed us. The other thing we've also seen is celebrating our culture and all the festivals back home. It sort of keeps us connected to the people back home. We were able to share delicacies, share our emotions with them and theirs with us. And so this has really helped us stay positive and stay moving forward. But obviously none of this can compensate for your family being here or you being around your family. And so we've also tried to make sure that we visit family as much as we possibly can.
If your goals are beyond your family boundaries, then I think there are some sacrifices that you might have to make in the due course of time, but eventually it's all for the good. So of course it's always loving and awesome when you can have your family where you are. So if there's an opportunity for you to do that, please do that. But if you still feel that you cannot do without your family around, then it's your call that you need to make.
The next reason, and this reason may not apply to everybody, is the collectivistic versus individualistic mindset. In Canada, one thing that I realized early on is that there is a lot of independency in terms of what you do. When I was back home in India, like even when I was working, we had a group of people, and we could afford to, let's say, hire a maid, or you could afford to hire somebody to be able to do some of your work. But then when I moved to Canada, I realized that you have to do your own chores. You have to be able to do like some of the other stuff where it is pretty expensive to be able to call upon people. Even when we bought a house here in Canada, when we had to do some sort of odd jobs around the house, I realized I needed to learn this if we had any chance of being able to keep our costs down. So it's definitely not easy for somebody when you move to a different country. First, in terms of the other reasons that we spoke about, and on top of that, being able to completely be independent and being able to do everything on your own.
For me, that was a major cultural shock because 26 years of my life, I grew around service workers where I didn't have to do anything back home. So when I moved in, every single job had to be done by myself. And although I know it's for my own family, it still was taking in time, for things to sink in because that's not something you're not used to, right? And especially being, away from family and getting to do all of these things, right, from cooking, cleaning to everything all by yourself. It was a major cultural shock, and I think people with similar mentality might sort of agree with me, but yeah, it is what it is, right? And like Manoj said, when we bought this house, for me to obviously it was a big house and we did love all of that, but when it came to the cleaning part, we always kept staring at each other's faces because we're like, whose turn it is to do it. And that's something that we absolutely want you to think, if you're somebody who can cope up with that, then that's absolutely awesome.
And guys, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely not easy to be able to change the mindset, but what we've realized is instead of thinking of it as a chore or something that's hard to do, we've treated it as something fun. In fact, that mentality change has really helped us, and in fact it's also helped us get closer to each other in the relationship as we understand how each other look at things and what each other can do for this relationship. Now that we've come to the end of the video, we hope we've been able to help you understand some of the reasons as to why immigrants leave Canada. We also hope we've been able to offer you some hope in terms of the steps that we took to be able to mitigate these reasons.
We completely understand that these might not be the only struggles or the solutions that are out there for you to overcome your situation in Canada. So obviously we would love to hear from you on some of these struggles and the ways through which you mitigated your fears in Canada. We would love to know about it in the comment section below.
And guys, what we also want to let you know is that there is hope. Please don't give up. If you're in a situation where we are contemplating if you want to stay or leave, and we would advise that do your best to be able to make sure you can mitigate those circumstances. But worst comes to worst, your life is more important than anything else. So make the decision that you think is right for you and your family.
We love to see you in another video. So until then, take care.
Bye-bye.